real quick, it is 8:30. But we also have some really great questions over here. So this is the point where if you need to go home, that's cool. If you want to stay here until the last person's here, I will stay here, and maybe they'll stay, I hope. And we want to tell you this too. If you have other obligations, don't feel like
Did you say there was pizza? Didn't you say there was pizza here?
I'll order you pizza. We'll stay here till midnight. Woo! Yeah. But so there's a lot of really good questions still left. So what we're going to do now is we're going to move into kind of like speed dating.
Yeah.
Okay, we're cutting your time to a minute.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we get to a point where like there's 2 people left in the room and everybody's gotten tired and you're done, and we still have more questions that haven't been answered, what we thought we may do is send them to you,
Yes.
and you guys could answer them,
Yes.
and we could release them back out to the group. But if we're all still here at the last question, we'll stay here till the last question. I just don't want you to feel like anybody's going to point you out if you got to get up and go. But we do want to respect everybody's questions on the table too. So, 1 minute. Speed dating now.
Okay.
And we
Okay?
can defer if somebody else has the best
We
answer,
can
right?
say
Yeah,
pass,
and
right?
if you don't,
Okay.
you don't have to answer every single one. I mean, we'll just kind of go through them, and once again, if you guys have some follow-up questions that haven't been answered on that particular topic, we'll still go through that same model. But I just want to be respectful of everyone's time, but we still want to make sure we answer your questions. So,
And look, y'all stayed. Love it.
Yay.
Okay, our first speed question is, what is your plan to increase per pupil spending in public schools? In 1 minute.
I'll take less than a minute because I know last year from my leadership position, I advocated for $300 million additional dollars in the classroom. Unfortunately, we couldn't get there, but I think my strategy is always like when I negotiate for my companies is aim high, and that way you can settle somewhere in between. So that'll be my goal each year.
My plan is to get different people elected.
Bang. That would help. My plan is obviously to, look at the system. I mean, look at all those tax incentives like Senator Standers was talking about. There's millions of dollars going out the door right now, and we have a commission that's saying these don't work, and sometimes it's ignored. That's one way. I mean, obviously we need more recurring revenue. That's literally the problem. I don't have all the answers, but I'm open to just about everything.
I agree with them. We need to recruit more businesses to the state of Oklahoma. Stop giving the corporate tax credits. Yeah, for sure.
The revenue, I've got a couple bills that would be revenue creators, and again, give that money to the local school district superintendents and boards to use that money. Again, local decisions, the best that they know how to use it better than anyone, and that probably would end up in the classroom.
Okay, our next question. What can we do about COLA or cost of living adjustments for retired public servants and educators?
I mean, real quick, it's going to come up, I think, this session. House passed a 4%. That's what we're pushing for. I don't know what the Senate's trying to do. But I do think something is going to happen there, either 2% or 4%. That's my gut feeling. It's got a lot of support across the aisle, so that's just what I think is going to happen.
There was an interim study this past summer that addressed COLAs and actuary study, and I think it's very, very real possibility because it looked like a very doable thing after coming out of that interim study and all the research and facts that were presented there.
The actuarials are, from my understanding, are come back pretty positive. I have run COLA bills before because I guess it's a bit of local control. I kind of like setting the parameters, but understandably, a couple of decades, 2 or 3 decades ago, some people abused those standards, so that's what happened to the COLAs, just so you know. So they kept depleting themselves, and so the state kind of had to come in and rescue them. If not, some of it would have defaulted, including the teachers' retirement fund would have defaulted. So it was done for good reason, but now the hands are tied so much, so I'm thinking we ought to loosen those up a little bit. But we'll see. I feel optimistic about this year.
Same.
Pass.
No, ditto, Mary, ditto.
Oh, ditto.
Yeah,
Great
ditto.
job, Rob. I'm counting on you.
Okay, our next question, and I'm sorry, this is 1 minute. How do you feel about the proposed Medicaid expansion alternative plan proposed by Governor Stitt?
Is the camera still on?
I have not read it, so
can I
I am
please
just going to
answer
say
that?
I don't know how I feel about it because
Okay, no,
I haven't
I'm
studied
just-
it.
Did somebody already? I'm sorry.
I was just
Oh,
saying that I don't know how I feel about it because I haven't studied it. So that was what? Yes, was that yesterday?
Yeah,
Can I
like
please
say,
influence-
it's
Yeah.
all new, and we're still
Yeah.
looking at it, as Sherry said.
Yeah.
And there's pieces of it that I agree with, there's pieces of it I don't, so.
Can I
again,
please
just-
influence my fellow board?
Please.
Let me hear
Please
what you have
do,
to say.
expert in
I've
Medicare.
studied this for 8 years.
Yep.
And so when I first got in the legislature, please give me slightly over a minute. When I first got there, I got bombarded. All these people, the pro tem, the floor leader, oh, you got to do this. I was the only healthcare guy, so they knew if they could get me on board. So I actually because I didn't understand how the whole thing works. I'm like, oh, okay, well, yeah, it's nice dinners. They flew me to Kansas, they flew me to Georgia, they flew me to Florida. I was going on all educational trips, if you will. So I was going all over the place, and I thought, well, hold on a minute. Why do these people want this so badly? That bothered me. I'm like, something's going on here. Maybe it's good, but maybe it's not. So just barely into, just a couple months into it, I met with a pro tem in December. I'm like, no, this is going a little crazy. So anyway, I started studying. I went to states on my own dime, all over the country: Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, Florida, back to Georgia, Kansas, Texas. It's the worst idea ever since unsliced bread. I mean, it's horrible. Essentially what it does is it guts Medicaid in order to give profits. If it was Oklahoma companies, maybe I'd be more amenable, but these are we're going to give billions of dollars to out-of-state companies to totally gut our Medicaid system, so our most fragile citizens end up with a horrible, worst HMO on the planet, medical system. And you don't want to pay for that. You're paying for that. So if you're going to pay for it, at least you'd want a decent system. Then you might think, well, that stingy old Rob, he's trying to save money. It doesn't. It costs you billions more so you can make profits for out-of-state companies. I don't know who's driving this crazy train, and I love the governor. I think he's a great guy. I just think we're driving down the road, the 4-day maybe is a good example. We haven't learned about what we're doing. I have a PowerPoint for you if you'd like it. But I am fighting to get with the governor more on this. I've visited with him and his staff. At the end of the day, I will oppose it tooth and nail. Back to the rebel thing, I don't care. I'm for whatever's best for Oklahomans. I will fight every member of my caucus. I'm having a reception in a couple weeks with all of my caucus members. I think I have 7 co-hosts of my caucus already to go against something that leadership wants. But anyway, sorry. But horrible idea. Please oppose this.
I'll defer my minute to him if he needs it.
Well, I'm going to take a little different tact. Listen, I think the governor's doing a very good job too. Compared to where we were before. Sorry, I'm just saying Mary Fallon was not popular in my district when I was knocking doors. Sorry, Mary. But so what we're seeing, because we have policy groups in my caucus. First of all, there's no automatic response to economic downturns in his plan. That's a big deal because we're relying upon a pretty up and down economy, volatile still. So natural disasters, tornadoes, those types of things, that could really affect things. When we're talking about block grants, I can't go into the science of block grants right now. It's just too much. I've had to learn myself. It's not a great idea. Capped and falling funding, think about that. That tends to fall short of meeting the need. Well, then that requires benefit cuts because you got to somehow do that. You got to even it all out when it comes to that. And increased flexibility and lack of minimum standards. Now, what that means is that basically states can shift the federal funds to other purposes or to replace state funding, or they can make program cuts that federal law doesn't permit now. Now, don't forget, what we're talking about is that something that people, 300,000 plus, already have approved to be on the ballot. We're just waiting to see June or November, and I suggest that you vote for that.
I have 2 comments about this. First of all, there are a lot of red conservative states that took the Medicaid match. This does not have to be a losing your conservative identity in order to participate with the Medicaid match. Look at Utah. Utah is full of church-going, very conservative people that they accepted the Medicaid match and the health outcomes just went through the roof. So that's the first point. Second point, I agree with Rob. And one person that I heard talking about it, it's like charter school Medicaid. So it's like charter Medicaid, because that outsourcing of the administrative cost of this to manage it is going to shareholders outside of Oklahoma. So that when you talk about shareholder profits, it's New York Stock Exchange shareholder profits that they end up getting the money off of it. It's not circling back around through our local providers, our local administrators. So that's, to me, always, we need to keep federal dollars in Oklahoma paying salaries for Oklahomans.
It's a bad idea.
It's not
I don't think Rob likes it.
not a great plan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can I make one qualification though? The block grant, appreciate that. I don't care. The money that we're going to get expansion. I've never supported expansion, just in full disclosure, but we're going to get it whether I vote for it or not. That's not what bothers me. It's how we're using the money. I appreciate your points, Jacob, but if we get the block grant, okay, fine. If we're going to expand the population, fine. I'm not a big fan of that, but we're going to do it. But how we spend the money, we should spend it responsibly. You're paying for it. You should demand that we spend it right, not enrich these out-of-state. I actually like some charter schools, so I think Millwood's an example of where they can do it right. But this, I appreciate your analogy. I think it's a decent analogy. But anyway, sorry.
1 minute? No, just
Yeah, I know. Sorry. Sherry, so I can have some of hers.
that's good. Yeah.
Okay, our next question. Do you believe Representative Ben Loring's House Bill 2914 requiring the legislature to follow the Open Meetings Act should be passed?
Yes.
Yes.
I
I haven't read
do.
it. I haven't read it. Do I?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I haven't read it, so.
It's just going to allow more eyeballs on all of us. It's going to allow all the open meetings acts we already have to be in the legislature as well.
But what about, we have closed door meetings.
Not anymore.
Oh, so but you have to be able to negotiate and all those things. So.
I can
No, it
answer
doesn't
real
go that
quickly
far.
for
Oh,
me
okay.
while they're discussing.
I haven't read it.
I
haven't read
I
it.
do not respond to or give an answer on that until I've had time to,
Yeah.
like I said,
Yeah.
research the
I
bill.
agree.
So until I've laid eyes on that bill,
I defer to my
What he
can't give you an
says.
answer.
Yeah,
I'll be
what he said.
transparent.
Absolutely.
We love you, Ben Loring.
Go, Ben.
Okay, how do you feel about work requirements for SNAP recipients?
I'll start with that real quickly. Already, SNAP recipients are working. I had a mom that I served at Adams Elementary, and she had to fax in her worksheet. She worked as a health aide, and she didn't have a fax machine. So she had these stack of papers, and she worked for like $7, $8 an hour. I don't know how much. She had 4 little kids. She was bone skinny, worked her rear off, but she was trying to find a fax machine to send in her stack of papers so she could get paid. And when I hear of work requirements for SNAP, what I see is some single mom with 4 kids that's trying to find a fax machine to turn in her paperwork so her SNAP benefits don't get cut off. So I think sometimes you want everybody working, but the stats show that SNAP people that get SNAP benefits are likely working 2 jobs in Oklahoma, not just 1. And we have cut down the requirements so low that the only people left on it are probably working very hard and deserve it, and they don't need that other hoop to jump through.
I agree with what Senator Bourne said. I'd just like to address the fraud that takes place sometimes in the SNAP that I'm aware of.
To be honest with you, I kind of like having the work requirements. Maybe that's not popular, but one thing I would say is you're paying for this system, and it's a great system. SNAP is food stamps, SNAP, whatever you would think about it, helps a lot of folks. But I've seen over my years so much abuse in the TANF and SNAP programs. And so I don't think a reasonable work requirement, because you mentioned a case scenario that's negative, but you don't want to have somebody that is just using that and is not in that situation. So maybe work requirements with some exceptions. But we spend $300 or $400 million a year on carbonated beverages in our SNAP program. And so my concern is, are we helping everybody that we can that needs help? Our seniors, our most fragile citizens, that's what that program's meant for, is people that are down and they need help. So when we're wasting all this money on things where we could help more people, that's my concern. So whether my reforms on SNAP or TANF or whatever those is what I want to do is try to make it where we can help more people. It's a finite amount of money.
Ding, ding.
Trying my Bernie finger.
Stop that.
He didn't know what was going on. Yeah. Believe it or not, when I was a teacher, my first year, I had to get on Snap. How about that? 2 kids, and we're separated. So, listen, I understand about the fraud. I do. I understand that you're trying to make something big, a big expense, a little bit less, which they're already doing that. And honestly, they're underfunded, and they're trying to figure that out already. When you put work requirements on there, it's true fact. They're already working. They're working poor. They're already out there. I was a teacher on Snap. That's embarrassing, right? It wasn't embarrassing to me. It got me to where I needed to be, and I was able to build up from there exactly what the system's supposed to be for. So I'm a believer. Yep.
Yeah, I personally, I don't have a problem with the reasonable, like what Senator Sanders said, reasonable work requirements. And as far as the parent of the 4 kids having problems getting their paperwork into the SNAP people, perhaps we need to look at that system and make that system more workable for working parents who don't have access to that. But I don't have a problem with that. If you look at research shows that people who get something for working for something, they actually feel better about themselves. And I just feel like when you give somebody something that they haven't earned, it's kind of like in my classroom. If I gave a grade to someone who didn't work for it, how would everybody else feel? You have to look at, I'm going to make sure that, I feel like I agree with Rob. I want them to work for it. It has to be reasonable, but I want them to work for those benefits.
Okay, just kind of an overall announcement. If anybody needs to get up, stretch their legs, use the restroom, get a drink of water, including the people on the table, please feel free to do so.
Thank you for that statement.
So,
Hurry, ask the easy ones.
Yeah, that's easy. Exactly.
yeah, easy. So
That was easy. Maybe I should, yeah.
So what steps are you taking to reduce overcrowding in our prisons, and are you willing to provide education and reentry programs for individuals who have committed violent and sex offenses? Why or why not?
So what was that last part about?
Yeah.
With 5
Repeat the
domestic
question.
violence bills filed this year, what was the last part?
Are you willing to provide education and reentry programs for individuals who have committed violent and sex offenses?
If you don't mind, I'll be quick. But for me, criminal justice reform, I support that. I think we can't ever lose sight of the victim, though. So, domestic violence crimes, we have a situation in domestic violence right now that wasn't there a few years ago. If I get in a bar fight, and I know this may be hard to believe, but I beat the crap out of the other guy, right? So if I beat him and he goes to the hospital with great bodily harm, I committed an 85% felony. But if I beat my girlfriend or my wife to that same extent, she ends up in the hospital, it's nothing. It's domestic violence. That's not right. So I think in the push we have today, I would caution us to not lose sight of the victims in those scenarios.
Yep, that's good.
So I would encourage us to think about that.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes, I've come around to that as well. Being at the Capitol again, I'm learning every single day, and we're kind of surrounded by both sides of that argument. And I got to be honest with you. I think if you do something, I don't know how to qualify it, but if you do something so egregious, I don't know if you can be let back out into society. I'm being honest. Call me a little more conservative on that. I don't know. But I will tell you this, I do think the majority, especially of the marijuana, people are still in prison for marijuana. That's legal. What are you doing? That's also a drag on the system. So I hate to flip that, but that's what's happening right now. It's legal. It's a medicine. There's people in prison right now, moms, dads, people's parents, who are in jail for something that's legal. Think about that for a second. That's just crazy. But to be honest with you, yes, I am a believer that you shouldn't just let everybody back out. You have got to have some type of education reentry because they've been in a whole different world. That's my opinion.
Yeah, so I am completely in support of educating our incarcerated individuals. Eventually, they're going to get out unless they're serving life sentences. And so we have to make sure that they have a life, they have a way of supporting themselves. We want them to come out and we want them to be productive citizens. And I love that we have been working on licensure for felons that are coming out and making it possible for them to educate themselves and to get a license to be a plumber or to be an electrician or any of those other ones. I don't remember what all ones we voted on, but there were several that we voted to change the requirements that they could actually get a license coming out of prison. And if you go, I went and visited Lexington last year. And one of the things that they do there is that they are teaching a lot of the people who are getting ready to get out. Once they get to a certain point in their time served, then they get to go through programs and they get some good behavior type credit. And they get to get jobs and they get training. And a lot of those coming out of our prisons, especially at Lexington, they're learning how to build furniture there. And they're learning how to, there's a call center there. I don't know if you guys knew that. And there is, they do all of their heat and air, all of their plumbing, all of that is done on site. And the incarcerated are actually the ones that do all the maintenance work at the prison. And so we are training them. What broke my heart was the group that I went into, the youngsters, that, there were kids there that I think 14 maybe on up to 18, and they were in this group, and they were all living in this one pod together. And that was one of the things that they talked about, was getting their GED and making sure that they get their education so that one day when they do exit, that they have the opportunities to go on to do other things. And so I think it's very important.
Much like Sherry, I taught in prison for a couple of years. Oh no, yours wasn't prison, yours was school. I actually did teach in prison for a year. So I do believe in rehabilitation.
Yeah.
Representative Sterling, I don't know if you got to hear the question.
Did not.
Okay. What steps are you taking to reduce our overcrowding in prisons, and are you willing to provide education and reentry programs for individuals who have committed violent and sex offenses? Why or why not?
Well, I think while they're in prison, I'm probably going to repeat a lot that's already been said up here since I wasn't in the room. But while we do have them in the prison, that is the best place. Obviously, they're a captured audience to do the training that is needed there. As a rule, I can't remember the statistics right off the top of my head, but there's a very good chance, I think like 3 out of 5 or something, they're going to be your neighbor eventually, a person that's been in prison. Now, we've got to also make regulations that are realistic for those people when they come out for the reentry program. We can't set them up for failure again. First and foremost, we got to protect our public, our law-abiding citizens, and make sure they're taken care of. And the whole thing with the criminal justice reform, I might be going off a tangent here a little bit, but I think the bottom line is, yes, it does need fixing. We're no longer number one. We're going in the right direction at least. Mm-hmm. But anytime you have such a dramatic change of policy here, it's going to take a while. It's going to be a very slow process to get it where it needs to be. And we're going to have to work the problem. And what I mean by that, unintended consequences. There's a lot of things we didn't foresee when we allow all these, when we've done a lot of these reforms. So obviously they're going to need to be tweaked. Look at take what's working and keep, and enhance on that. The problems that we've incurred from some of the early releases and so forth, we need to address those as they come. Work the problem. Simple as that.
I would just say that we need to be very cautious about profit motives that profit off of incarcerating people. We also have a problem with funding our courts through fees and fines. As an attorney, and I sit on the judiciary. That is a huge problem when the way we keep our courts open is fees and fines, which also causes people to have to stay and end up in prison because they can't pay the fees and fines. That's a real big concern of mine. Also, I do believe in restorative justice, and I think we need to be more discerning between those that, if given the opportunity to be treated differently, then they would treat others differently, from those that are pretty much have made a decision that they would like to try to get through life by being a criminal. And in schools, you see, you know, especially as a school counselor, you can see those kids that, oh, they made a really bad choice, and some of them are really horrible. But you also see that that they really do want to learn to do differently from those that are pretty set and determined to live a life of disorderliness or be really an expert in criminal behavior. So I think we need more discernment on what kind of person that we're dealing with.
Okay, our next question. As our economy improves, women and people of color still struggle to make it financially. Do you believe Oklahoma should expand earned income tax credits?
Yes.
I'll start with that. I think Sherry and I agree that if you work, you know, you should get paid for what you work for, and if you work for what you get paid for. And the earned income tax credit was started by Reagan, and it is the one thing that rewards work. It is a work subsidy. We give corporate subsidies out all of the time, like Oprah gives out minivans. And but the earned income tax credit is a work subsidy. You don't get it unless you work. There's no way to get the earned income tax credit unless you work. And it's situated for families. So it is the one, and it subsidizes in some ways small businesses that can't afford to pay their workers a higher wage. The earned income tax credit comes in, and it kind of holds up that lower wage that a lot of our small businesses have to charge. So to me, that's one of my most favorite programs that really rewards work and really helps our working families.
You're loud. Not a big fan of that. I'll tell you why. But I don't vote for. I guess maybe I'm a little unique. I don't vote for any of tax incentives. I mean, because my feeling is that you're paying for this. So if I send tax money to wind farms, your tax dollars, I don't think if I knocked on your door and said, "Hey, can I have $10,000 to fund a new windmill in Woodward?" I bet you would say no. So I'm against that, but in that same philosophy, I'm also against you paying your taxes, but having to pay more to pay somebody else that's not paying taxes. I mean, if we can set up other programs or help nonprofits succeed to help those people out, I think it's better. But, you know, as far as those struggling, absolutely, I think we should do everything we can to help all groups. I mean, I got in trouble I was at a recent at a law school actually, doing a panel out of state. I got a lot of criticism for saying I was colorblind, but I am. I have, over the years, the guy that runs my software company is African American. I have a Hispanic running one of my other companies. I don't care. For me, it's just who is the best for running or doing the job. So, I think, maybe that's not the best way to look for culturally sensitive folks, but I think if we all just said, let's grow the economy as big as we can, everybody get a job, I think that's the best we can do. And how we get there, I'm not exactly sure, but keep going. But I just say no to all of the things that take money from you. I just don't like that.
Yeah, we politicized this. That's what happened. Right before I got into office, this was a big vote. I remember it. And it was a big deal. I made a big post about it. I was like, hey guys, that was like the one thing you didn't want. That was the tax credit you didn't want to get rid of. So it was very frustrating because, again, as a low-income teacher, yeah, I know it's still true too. After an average $6,000 raise, teachers are still not rolling in the dough. I took the EITC. It's there to help people out who, yes, just like what Senator Bourne was saying, who are working, who are doing the best they can. And it's just a little way of saying, hey, here you go. Thank you for providing for this. And also think about it. It helps the economy too. Think about that. So, yes, I'm for the EITC, definitely.
Yeah, I would say that I am for the earned income tax credit because I believe that there are some tax credits that are worthy. I actually have one that I'm running this year, and that was the one that I didn't get to tell you about earlier, for businesses that hire kids that are coming out of aging out of foster care that have not been adopted, and I believe that that money that families that get the earned income tax credit, they can take that money and they can do the things that they need to do with it, and it might be the difference between them having to be on welfare and not. And so I completely support that. And, if you have to get it and you're working and you can get it because you're working, then I support that.
I'm probably somewhere kind of in between these three and Senator Standridge. I believe sometimes, with just 2 or 3 statements about it real quick, I think sometimes on the surface it sounds it's great, and like I say, there's a lot of good things about it, but I think we have to look at the overall implications of it, the pros and the cons, and weigh all variables when we look at those things, because both points of view here are very positive, and they have a lot of merit to them. But again, that's just how I'm geared, I guess. I like to look at things from the standpoint of the positive and negatives, the pros and cons both ways, and then the overall impact of it for the future. So again, sometimes things that seem like, oh, that's a slam dunk, that's a given, that's the way to go. Maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. So maybe there's something in between. But again, me personally, that's something I would delve into very deeply, drill down into, to make sure that I'm making the best decision moving forward for my constituents in my state.
All right, this next question is addressed to Senator Standridge, so we'll let you answer first.
Awesome.
Considering that the turnaround time for a medical marijuana card is about 2 weeks, why do you feel expediting the process for the terminally ill is necessary?
It's an interesting question. If anybody knows my history on this issue, my wife does. She's in the back. So I'm a pharmacist. My wife's a pharmacist. I wasn't really very supportive of the 788. In fact, I don't think. But you know what? When I look at these state questions, I'm not sure if I like the way they're getting to the ballot. Just so you know, but I don't feel like it's my role as a leader to tell people how to vote. Yeah, if they want to know information and education about it. So just to give a little bit of my history, kind of to understand where I'm at now. But I'm a big respecter of the law. And so once it becomes law, I'm sitting there looking at it, and I'm talking to some of the friends I made over the years trying to convince me that I was wrong. But now I'm looking at it in a legal sense and saying, okay, if we have this law, who can it help? And I had a friend of mine that's actually a former pastor, but his wife was having this pain. She wasn't hospice, but it was a process. I mean, it was, went to dispensary, did all of this, and I'm sitting there thinking, what if she was on hospice? I mean, so she's got 6 weeks to live, and you're going to make her, it's not just 14 days. There's a process you got to go through, go to the doctor. So if we're going to help the people that can be helped the most with a law like this, I think we should be doing things like that. And so I authored a bill last year on a safety side of this to require smaller batches to be tested. And I've got another bill on safety this year. But this year I'm very proud of a bill that I have that requires, even OMA is not real happy with me, but it requires them to expedite to 5 days. So if somebody's terminally ill and then they believe this will make their quality of life better, I think that should be expedited with no charge, because they're terminal, they're end of life. And frankly, I was told the other day, actually just a couple of days ago, that the problem with your bill, Senator Standridge, is our computer system won't let me click a box to say that. And I'm like, oh, you're talking to a computer programmer. I think we can do that. But anyway, so I'm very proud of that legislation, and so I think, regardless of what you think on the issue, there are people that I think their quality of life can be helped. And so I think if we focus on those folks, we can make the best of even something maybe you didn't think that big about when it came through, but make the best of that. Anyway, thanks. Great question.
Yeah, that's your bill.
Okay, I believe we have a follow-up on the floor.
Are you about to criticize me for being, no?
Senator, Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah, I got you.
All right, I like your bill. The problem is, we know that with hospice care, one of the largest problems is end-of-life care is the financial burden. And this bill, while it's a great idea, it's something I've been trying to get to happen since the beginning of this program, you're charging $250.
Oh, no,
I've
no
just read
offense.
I've just read the bill.
No offense, you
Sitting
misread.
here.
Let me clarify. So here's the deal. So think of a passport. So what I did on this, because one of the first complaints I got was funding. So Rob, great, you want to do that, but you're going to tell education that we're going to have to spend another $1 million at OMMA instead of $1 million. I'm just using that as an example. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I pay for this? Well, I don't know if you know, but some people, fortunately for them, this is a great thing. It's not me, I'm squeaky cheap. They'll go to the office and they'll say, okay, I'm applying for X, and I can get it free if I wait 10 days, but if I pay an extra $100, I can get it in 5. Some people will have enough money where they just check the $100 box every time. You know this. And so what I did was I separated out. So you can either be under hospice care and not pay anything, or you can, if you're not, you can check the box for an extra $200. So that's how I'm funding.
Okay, I misread that, then I
So
apologize.
I'm a
You're right.
creative financier. So the way I'm funding our terminal ill patients so that we don't have to spend more money is I'm taking advantage, sorry if you're filthy rich here, sorry, but I'm taking advantage of those folks that have the extra $200 and just check the box and say they pay, because I guarantee there'll be enough people to pay the $200 that'll more than pay for the terminally ill patients. So anyway, that's why that's in there. A marijuana question? Okay. You're filthy rich? No. Yeah. Did I offend you? Are you filthy rich? Did I offend you? I'm sorry. Okay, all right.
Okay, so I am a constituent of both Representative Conley and Senator Standridge.
Awesome.
And Senator Standridge, I have to say, you've learned a lot since the walkout. And I sat in your office, and I so appreciate that. But I wanted to follow up on the SNAP question, because my mother raised 4 children and was lucky enough to be married when she had the 4 children, and then opened up a home daycare before she and my father divorced. But I would think that many people consider raising children to be a full-time job. And if we think about how expensive it is for daycare for multiple kids, how do we say that that woman's not working and that she has to get a job to get SNAP benefits? Unless I misunderstand the issue.
I'm sorry. One, this is a federal program. So as much as I'd like to take the carbonated beverages out and save you $300 million so that your mom could get the benefit she's earned, you're talking about something that, one's a federal decision, but 2, she would be fine. The work requirements is for an able-bodied person. Your mom would probably be able to get some part out of that. I'm not sure what, but I'm sure, I haven't looked at the federal work requirements, but I'm assuming they're taking those cases into account. But it's not our, I mean, I know you want our opinion, I'm glad to give it, but just as a sidebar, I'm the same exact person before. The walkout was a very high pressure situation. People were trying to, I have never complained. You've never heard me complain. But people came in my office, they were mad. They were angry. I don't blame them. I'm not getting mad at them. I don't care. I was not angry. But when you're angry and you go talk to people, sometimes you see something that's not real. You can ask my wife. She's married to me almost 30 years. I'm the same. I'm the same ornery, stubborn person. I've not changed my policies. I've not changed my votes. Nothing has changed. But I hope maybe outside of a cramped office with 20 people, you're seeing maybe a different person than you thought you saw then. Yeah, sure. But to me or to
No, to you, but I mean, we can also let Representative Conley answer the question. When I was talking about the SNAP benefits, I'm saying when she was a young mother of 4, not, now that she's in her 60s, would you say that being a full-time mother of multiple children is a full-time job and therefore should be respected that way? Secondly, sir, when I came to visit you, I don't feel like you knew as much about school funding as you do now, which I really appreciate, because you did
Yes.
ask me if now that we got a raise, we would be going back to a 5-day week. And I've told you that was a Peter and Paul kind of an issue. So I so appreciate
Oh.
how much you've grown on education-related issues.
Yeah, touche. Yeah, you're right. I have tried to educate myself a little bit on both your issue and on funding. Absolutely, you're right. I think now I'm thinking about this. It's a federal issue, so I'm going to defer. I'm going to blame or defer to my friends Inhofe, Langford, and Cole. But I will say that I would be willing to bet that if you're a single parent provider and you have children dependents, that there probably is a way that the SNAP can help you and maybe it might, combination of daycare and different things. I don't know what the requirements are. I think you're talking about a unique situation like Senator Bourne did. I appreciate her heart, her passion. Her heart is absolutely right place. What she says comes straight from the heart. But I think those are situations that might be outside what I'm talking about. But I still want that $300 million of your money that's been spent for carbonated beverages. I think that's ridiculous.
I'd just like to say, and maybe you've already done this, if not, I encourage you to, have you reached out to your congressman with those exact questions? Have you? No, sir, because I just wanted to know. Okay. Well, I just like to say, I encourage you to do that because those are very valid
That's a
questions.
good point.
if you have
Yeah, it really is a good point, and I'm glad that you brought it up because, that's one of the things that I love about doing things like this is that I get the opportunity to see different points of view and things that I had never thought of. And so I really appreciate you bringing that to the attention. And I mean, I agree that even at this point, it would be worth looking it up to see if there is an exemption for single working mom or single moms with that many kids. Yeah, absolutely. Because I completely agree with you that would be an issue and definitely needs to be looked at to see if there is an exemption like that and push for it if there's not. Yeah.
I would like to talk about that scenario. As far as what you can buy with SNAP benefits, whether or not it's healthy food or not, that's to me a separate issue of what you do to qualify for it. In Oklahoma, an average parent getting SNAP only provides for 2 weeks worth of food. I volunteer in lots of food banks. I've helped people connect them to food banks, and it is commonly known among all church food banks and food banks throughout the Oklahoma that you have to go to food banks for 2 weeks worth of food if you get full SNAP benefits in Oklahoma. Under Oklahoma law, we get to decide what poverty level qualifies you for SNAP benefits. Some states have 200% poverty, 80% poverty, 50%, all these different numbers. Oklahoma has the lowest poverty threshold. So anybody that's on SNAP benefits is only getting half a month's worth of food to begin with. So I think we need to all be aware that this really impacts people in a big way. Finally, with your mom, if we do to say we don't want moms having 4 kids and living off government and having SNAP benefits unless they work, then we need to have subsidized daycare, which Oklahoma cut subsidized daycare significantly over the last, I don't know how many years. So,
Okay,
That's good.
we're going to go to one more question, and then if your question, we do have a few left, but if they haven't been answered, please feel free to come up and visit with them and ask your questions. But are you willing to author or co-author legislation that will provide financial assistance for those school employees who lose their jobs due to school closures as a result of Senate Bill 441?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
I would support it, but I'm a Democrat, so we'd need to find some Republicans that would support it.
She's not kidding around. So, yes, of course, I would support that. She's not kidding. You're going to have to find somebody in the majority party that really champions that, and I would champion it if I was Republican, Democrat, whatever. And I sure hope it doesn't go that route.
Yeah.
I would hope that. I would hope it wouldn't go that route. Are you talking about a severance type package? I mean, what is the thought? Have we planned this out, or is this
If I may,
Okay.
Senator Sandridge, what happens when a school consolidates? The school that they're going into gets to keep their staff, and the one that is closing down, they get nothing. And so sometimes what we have negotiated in the past per our members is that through the consolidation fund, we can give them some income and make the school be obligated to help them
Help
through
them
that
out.
time.
Like, yeah, to tie them over. I mean, that sounds
Well,
reasonable, but I
that
would,
changes, so.
I would say though that this might surprise some, but I don't like consolidation. I think it's a red herring, and it's and I'm actually one of just a few Republicans that think. I mean, I think even Democrats actually like. I mean, I don't think it's a partisan issue. Well, I'm not talking about people here, but anyway, I think it's a nonpartisan issue. But I do sincerely believe it's a red herring. I think that, and I grew up in small town Oklahoma. My wife's from here. I mean, it doesn't save any money. So all you do is you grow the other district. You hire the superintendent there. So Frank becomes an assistant superintendent somewhere else, probably making the same salary, and then he has assistant. I mean, it doesn't save any money. Trust me, it doesn't save any money. We've given them volunteer methods to do that for years, and when they do it, they really don't save any money. I just say, let's figure out how to make schools more efficient. That's a fine thing, but let's don't shut them down.
I want to add something to that, well, in a minute.
We've run the batteries out.
Right, okay. With that consolidation, I've ran I'm a math teacher, so that's what I do for a living. So I ran all the numbers. There's 135 districts that are affected by this bill. Let's do lowball numbers. Let's say 10 have to consolidate, just 10. I'm wondering how many know that it is a state statute that the Department of Education has to give every single receiving school $500,000. So who has $5 million?
Thank you. I wasn't aware of that. But
Yes,
that's
it's state statute that every receiving school gets $500,000, and then when those students go to that school, they then get the per pupil funding. But if a school just shuts down, like has happened in my area, Roosevelt, Carter, different schools like that, they were like 20 minutes from this place and this place and that place. So when they shut down, they said, you can just go wherever you want. And when that happens, kids have that access that you can go across district lines. Well, when you do consolidation, then those students are, like you would say, mandated to that very school, that receiving school, because it was board approved on both ends. But and even if only 10 do it, and I can tell you honestly, I've already talked to 4 schools that they are having town hall meetings because they think that's where they're going.
Well, my largest school districts actually, I think, are okay with consolidation. I'm not a big fan.
Which we'd love to have them. Why don't we start?
We have a follow-up over here. I just want to say something because I think that's an important point to bring back to your peers is that everything has a price tag. Everything has a price tag, and they need to know that I don't think that everybody really believes that there's people that are going to shut their doors. We won't. We'll have to cut counseling services that we've had back in. We'll have to cut programs possibly. We won't shut, but there really are communities that are going to shut down. And that's going to cost the state too. You don't get to just shut them down and then wash your hands of it. And so we got to have those conversations with whoever your budget people are. Is like, if it's 10, do you have that 5 million? Do you have 10 million sitting around? If it's 20, how many is it? Why aren't we asking these questions before we run a bill through, and we don't even think about the consequences of the people that it's going to affect or the money that it's going to cost to make up for those consequences? That's not a question. I just wanted to. Yeah, 2 more hours.
Yeah,
And this,
consolidation.
and the town
And this
loses
is my
its
question,
identity.
so I'll just clarify a little bit. Yeah, I've read all the stuff that is coming through for the 4-day school coalition. I know that there are schools that, if they're forced to go to 5 days, entire towns will have their schools closed. I'm not talking about consolidation here. I'm talking about when we have towns that can no longer have school because there's not money, what are we going to do for the people, because they're the principal employer for that town? Are we going to do something, or are we just going to say, hello, ghost town.
Yeah. Well, I completely agree with you that something would need to be done for those staffs that lose their positions and towns that lose their main employer. And one of the things that I did in order to try to reach out to someone that could lend a voice to this issue, I reached out to the director. I think his title is director of the Oklahoma Municipal League, which he's kind of like the go-to for cities. And so I called him and I said, listen, Mike, I don't know if you're aware of this, but these are some things that some of these towns are looking at if they are forced to go to 5-day and forced to add 20 days or however many days to their calendar. And I said, were you aware of this? And he said, no, I wasn't. And I said, well, I would really appreciate it if you would reach out to your cities and talk to them about what's going on with this 4-day situation. And he even said, maybe this, he said, we try not to get involved in school issues and that sort of thing. He said, but maybe this is an issue that we need to take, that I need to bring to the board and let them make a decision on this so that we can, advocate for these small towns. And so just so you all know that there are other people other than, just the coalition that are advocating for those situations and trying to prevent that from happening in these smaller towns.
Yes, I would definitely be interested in, helping with that situation. I'm not sure if we're talking about a one-time payment or perennial stipend or not, but I've said multiple times, because I have some very small communities in my district, that once the school goes, the community goes. I mean, that's a given. I mean, it's the main entertainment. It's the main employer lots of times. It's the lifeline of those cities. Because, like I say, when they leave, when they go, those teachers, those staff, they've got to go find jobs elsewhere. There goes tax base even diminishing further. So again, it's just it's a trickle down effect, and like I say, it's very it reaches out in ways that we don't even think about sometimes.
Yeah.
My district, I don't have. I've got Norman and Noble. They're not going to close down. But I think it's important to know that even though I don't have a school that might close down, I would definitely support something like this because, Oklahoma it's rural still, But I think we have to take a good hard look at this though, especially after the census comes out. I think it's starting to change, and I think that's around the United States too. And this is just one battle I think we're starting to fight. That again must stay unified, and must stay loud and advocate for the small town that you grew up and love. I think that's very important at this point.
I just think that we need to really be committed to not being okay with disposing of people or communities. And I think we live in a very disposable society. I think part of our incarceration is a little bit about that. A part of our the way we just, if somebody is too much of a bother or doesn't fit our Excel spreadsheet the way we want it to, then we just kind of had an attitude of just getting rid of the problem. And I think in order for us to live the way we want to in this very tense, anxiety-ridden with all the media that we have to actually make closer, more meaningful connections with each other. And I know that that's happening in our rural communities, and that way of life is modeling that for everybody else. So we really need to make sure that we don't just, always look at the Excel spreadsheet and also put people before policy, and make sure that the policy works for people, not the other way around.
Thank you guys for sticking in with this. I know that many of us could stay here forever talking about this stuff, but it's 9:30. Really, truly, we're so grateful that you came. I think this is what we've started in this community by through the foundation, having these election forms that we had in the last election cycle, and starting to wake people up that their voice does matter, their vote does matter. I think a lot of people feel very disconnected from the political system. They don't know how to reach out to you. They don't think that their vote matters. It does. And we've shown that here in Noble, like she said earlier with Sherry Conley. What, it was 65 votes, and we tallied up 67. 67 votes. And in the Noble precincts, she won by 65.
Yeah.
Because we worked for her.
Yeah.
And that's
You
what
all.
it takes at the end of the day, and I hope everybody's taking that. You're already made the first step, you're here, is that our voices do matter. They are listening to us. We have to spread those voices outside of our own community and inspire our friends that live in other communities to get involved in this. So whether you're for a 4-day school week or you don't like the 4-day school week, you prefer a 5, we all have our own opinions, and those are all valid. But this is about local control. And so I'm just going to encourage you on this 4-day issue to reach out to your friends, invite them to our group, at least so that they're informed. And they learned a little bit, at the end of the day, they learned a little bit more about how to reach out to these people and engage them the right way to talk about what's important and demand that their voices are heard. So thank you all for being here, because that's a huge step. Can we please give a huge round of applause for these guys? You guys, I mean, you're like champs. 3 hours in the hot seat. Eee.
It was fun, yeah.
I mean, we did let you go to the bathroom once. Next time we might give you some pretzels or something. No, so keep in tune. If you have questions that you want to ask them, come on up. In the spring, we will be having our election forums. Those do not last this long. They are very structured and not as much of dialogue, but we wanted to have that tonight. So thanks for coming. Go Bears and Indians.